Oh, we made it eventually.
We made it eventually.
Josh, you're gonna have to start again and make the intro pop.
Yeah, I know.
Get the spirits high.
Yeah, I know.
The real game developers experience where things don't work the first time. It's
Yeah,
authentic.
Yeah.
authentic. Just after the alpha release, just work for the bugs and then keep on iterating on. And saying that, uh, welcome to the February Auckland Game Dev meetup. Sorry for the major delays there, but as in game dev, there's a lot of technical issues, and we just keep on iterating upon it. But yeah, so our topic for today is a game dev retrospective in 2021. I hosted by myself, by myself, Josh, alongside Logan, C2 Systems, and Carl of Rocketwerkz. So yeah, Carl, you were actually starting up a really nice point about releasing Icarus in the near um, second half of 2021. So
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about retros, this
Mhm,
is probably the only point, or the main point that I wanted to make. So I don't know if I'll have many more exciting things to say after this. But one
mhm,
thing that happened to me over the last year that was quite a big shift was because we launched Icarus in lockdown. I had a realization that I am actually, a remote producer now. Like I have the skills to be a remote producer, and it's
mhm,
been an interesting experience communicating to the team through Slack mostly and Discord
mhm,
and Google Meet meetings, and just how the team operates that way is completely different to how they operate in a studio. So that was like a big realization to me that we were able to launch a game remotely, which I didn't think was possible before. I didn't think I could do my job remotely, but now I've
mhm,
accepted that that's the new normal. And yeah, so that's been an interesting shift just to accept that working remotely is now like a valid. It's not a temporary thing anymore, and that's a thing
mhm,
that a lot more people are, getting jobs overseas, for example, and things like that. That now. I'm not considering, but like looking at and yeah, thinking about what it would be like working for a remote team in the future. But
mhm.
I'm curious to know what your guys' experience is like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me at the start of the pandemic, I sort of transitioned to a job working in Australia, so we're fully remote at our company. There is no office. Our CEO sort of has sort of like a quite a fancy house where we've done one big meeting since I've started working there. But yeah, we do all of our communications is done through Microsoft Teams, and I think that it has some interesting challenges doing things remotely, but I think it's really awesome. We've recently transitioned to a lot of our stuff to working in VR, and it's amazing
Mhm,
how much more lifelike having been able to use gestures with your hands is compared to just even a video call like we're doing today. Like
Mm.
there's so much that's conveyed when you actually see someone's physical. Well, they're not even really their physical hands. It's like their virtual physical hands, sort of. So we use that quite a lot as well, and the tools are getting quite advanced that Facebook has created for Meta, depending on if you want to use the new name, where you can share your computer's screen, you can see your real keyboard in VR. So
Oh.
That's an area that I haven't dived at all in, and is into VR. And I wonder if there'll be a day where, game developers that are working on a mobile title or a PC game use VR as a means to communicate and to like hold meetings. I think that will be an interesting shift because right now we're seeing like VR companies naturally progress to having their meetings inside VR, but
Mm.
hasn't spread to because I guess it's another piece of tech that a company would need to acquire for every employee, so it's a bit of an extra cost.
it's so interesting all the workflows they have. Like you can define like back there like a whiteboard, and then you hold the controller like this, and you can draw on the whiteboard beside each other,
Wow,
Oh,
or you can
really?
set up the whiteboard on your desk. So
wow.
it's quite interesting the different sort of workflows that have been created in these VR collaboration apps.
Yeah, I
Mm.
mean one thing I've learned, but I mean the talk of going more VR kind of takes away from this point, but asynchronous communication is something that's become a lot more common. So that's like through apps like Slack, where your time isn't directly, you're not interrupted. You're free to explore channels as you see fit, and you're free to soak in information when it works for you, rather than someone kind of interrupting you at your desk and you having to stop work and get out of that state of flow, which I found to be really helpful. It's quite hard to be a producer in those situations because sometimes you're waiting a while for someone to respond, or you're not quite sure if someone's busy at the time. But I've really gotten used to it, and I think if I'm curious to know if people going into a more VR like future are going to want more like synchronous conversations, if they're going to like miss that from an office space, or if there's a trend where asynchronous conversation becomes is determined as being more efficient, and then more people gravitate to things like that, things like Discord. Or Discord with voice channels is kind of different, but Slack as a good example, or email is interesting.
I'm curious. What do you guys do stand up sort of for the tasks and?
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
in Discord we have a like Slack channel for each department, and every morning the different departments kind of gather in their Discord channels and have their stand up. We've tried all sorts of different things. Like we have Discord meeting rooms where people go in for meetings. We have desks where it's just for someone to be present on Discord, but not necessarily with other people if they want to be in that state of flow. And people can enter their desk, and it's just like a list of like 30 desks that people just sit in if you need to get in touch with someone ASAP. So we've been experimenting with different ways of structuring the team in like a digital environment. And some teams, for example, just have their stand-ups on Slack, and people just post like what they're doing that day in like a channel or in a thread, and that works as well. And I think there isn't really like an easy solution. I think every team operates differently depending on the size of the team, depending on how they operate, where their tasking comes from, if they need to really be over communicating to the rest of the team. So it's weird. Like I'm sure every studio is different, and then every team within the studio is also different. So it's just at the moment just experimenting with different ways of communicating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We recently switched to well, it's probably not actually that recent, but we just have like a bot that asks us every day, like, what are you doing? What are you working on? Do you have any blockers? And I think that's worked really well for the team. And then we sort of scheduled 1 or 2 meetings a week, sort of where we actually just have more of a general catch up due to not having stand up each day. Because we used to
Sounds
have.
like I'm being replaced by a bot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting that sort of having these bots, where you sort of there's certain things you miss that are quite hard to sort of measure. Just the sort of general social interaction. And if anyone has any questions during this, please feel free to type a message in Twitch chat.
Yeah.
Totally.
Feel free to type it in.
What's your situation been like, Josh?
Yeah, funny you guys actually mentioned about stand-ups and the like, because I just started a new job that actually had. So I just started a new job as a project manager over a software development company called Communica, and most of my main task is just catching up the documentation and just going through our processes. But yeah, as you mentioned, so like we were actually having a chat a few hours ago about possibly working remotely, and apparently, from my understanding, the way they've done it is just to split the development team in smaller teams. So the bigger team or the more senior developers go for the bigger projects, and the smaller ones just continue on with their current projects while also learning along the way. But it is also true though, it's like you can't. It's a bit difficult capturing the culture and checking in on people if you do it asynchronously rather than synchronously. And I think there's like a few already virtual comms apps that already do that, where you can do virtual, where you can still have synchronous communication, but it's based on spatial audio, so it'll be like a simulating a real life office space. So if you walk away from a desk too far, you don't really hear them too often. But if you go to their desk, you can hear the conversation coming through them. So I think
Yeah.
that's like the next, yeah, I think that's like the next step when it comes to virtual communications, at least, or at least working remotely. Hmm.
Yeah, one thing I've found really hard is since the beginning of the year when we've kind of gone down levels and there's been discussions
Hmm.
of going back to work. It's hard when the team is split with half of the people continuing to work remote and then the other half going into the office. You can't
Hmm.
really have like a hybrid situation, or you can't really have the office available and then get everyone like a second setup for them to have at home. It's an interesting thing where you kind of need to commit to one or the other. And at the moment,
Hmm.
remote's just easier because things are still uncertain.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, definitely, definitely. But yeah, one other thing I kind of learned on, well, one of my favorite highlights in 2021 is just like the amount of games and like amount of people actually working remotely these days. That's actually kind of nice to see,
Hmm.
especially in like if you're looking for more for more staff and just like trying to find ways to work on a project in a much more efficient time. It's like one way to go about it. Just looking for people in your circle and just working asynchronously.
Mm. It's
Mm,
for the just speaking like for the New Zealand games industry, it's hard
mm,
knowing with the rest of the world now being like a competitor for like local talent. I hope we don't lose too many people to bigger paychecks that they could get elsewhere. It's like a good and bad thing because if someone's able to work for a company like Riot Game, well, I don't think Riot
mm,
has remote workers, but like Blizzard or EA, like Microsoft, if they're able to work for them, that's great for like the local talent to like upskill in that way
mm,
and be exposed to a big company like that. But at the same time, it's taking them away from a local studio they could be working for. So it's an interesting
mm.
discussion about how the future of the industry is going to look in New Zealand as it grows.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
a really interesting problem, and I think it definitely goes lots of ways, that issue. I think it's gonna, with the whole even outside the game industry, with the whole more people working remotely. I think with the
Mm.
different minimum wages in different countries and whatnot, I think it's going to create a lot of interesting challenges.
Yeah, tax incentives is a big thing that the NZGDA are trying to advocate for at a government level because competing with places like Australia and even just overseas and in Europe, just some of the like ability for them to prop up studios is so much easier and supported than it is in New Zealand right now, which is hard. So hopefully we'll see that change over the next few months, few years.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And speaking of games, though, there was actually something interesting that I learned during Kiwi Jam 2021. And that surprisingly enough, when it comes to prototyping, a lot of people are actually going for more physical prototypes rather than making a digital prototype of their idea.
Hmm.
I've noticed when I actually was playing around on most of their games, it was like historically it's always been 70-30 when it comes to digital versus physical games. But 2021 was actually the first one where it was a definite 50-50 split.
Hmm.
It's very interesting in that it's it's kind of like, because we were just out of lockdown during that time, I guess people were just like missing the IRL aspect of it, and we're just wanting to play games like in a physical setting rather than playing it on virtually or like online. There's something interesting to notice. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, was that people that showed up in person, or was that
Yeah.
including the people that did it remotely from the beginning?
Some of them were actually doing it from the beginning as well. So that was actually interesting. And then they just went to showcase it on Sunday night.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The board game industry is definitely in. They've probably been hit a lot, like by the lockdown.
Mm.
But I feel like, I mean, like card game. I don't really know what the stats are of how big that industry is. But I wonder if more people have transitioned into wanting to develop more seriously games there, or if it's just more of like a hobby, experimenting with different game mechanics in a physical environment, rather than trying to make like a business out of those board games or card games.
Yeah.
Mm,
Mm.
I guess. I guess yeah. Cause I think Flesh and Blood, I think Flesh and Blood just started off as a hobby idea, but then exploded into its own massive thing when it hit the U.S. market. So yeah.
I played an awesome board game recently called Kopapa, which is like a
Mm.
learning Tadeo game, and it's kind of like charades, or like 30 seconds, but with Tadeo words, and it was actually quite fun. I'd definitely recommend it for people wanting to learn Tadeo, and the artwork is amazing. The branding of it's awesome.
Mm.
Yeah, as James is saying in chat, I think one of the great things about making board games is during game jams is you can get quite a lot done. Like you don't have to. It's very easy to write logical rules with words rather than sort of programming, because if something's not clarified properly, you can just clarify it when someone's like, how does this work? And you actually can avoid a lot of the rigorous logic that is just required by programming. Where, you know, if it's like pass a card to the person to the right, you don't have to code any systems, you don't have to do any animations, you get to skip out on so many things.
Mm.
And I know that at some of the game jams at Waikato Uni in the last few years, not during the pandemic, but before then, the use of 3D printers has allowed people to create quite cool things during game jams, which just before 3D printers, there was just no way to do anything like that.
Mm.
Mm.
Where people would just like
Yeah.
sort of 3D print things and then regular print things and just tape like little card things onto the 3D printed like base plates or objects.
That's cool.
Huh. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah. Hmm. What were some of the most What was the biggest highlight for you, Logan, when it comes to game dev, or
Oh.
just like personal achievements at least?
I think one of the most interesting things that I've been thinking, it's not entirely related to the question, but I think one of the most interesting things that I'm realizing, sort of the more game development and whatnot I do, is when anyone makes these sort of viral YouTube videos or viral games, things like Among Us and whatnot, I think you have to set yourself sort of a time frame and just give it your absolute best. And sort of like all these things that go viral, I think everyone, like there's this sort of thing that you can detect with indie games when people are like really passionate about it. With games like Risk of Rain and Among Us, Minecraft, Terraria, I think like there's a bit that you can feel that's sort of like this pure passion. And I think when you're developing games, I think that's one of the most important things. And if you're not passionate about a project, then I think sometimes you just have to drop it and move on to something else. So I feel like I kind of dodged the question a bit and sort of went on a bit of a ramble. But I think if I could give any advice, like I saw with this meetup, there was quite a lot of new users, and I'm going to make the dangerous assumption that a lot of them are university students, which I don't know if is true at all. I think when you're working on projects, just give it your all and just time limit them so that you don't just you're not just working on them forever, because they'll wear you out if that's the case.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, especially like I think one of the biggest challenges I've faced is like finding people I mesh with and actually form a good team with. And game jams are actually a good are definitely a good place to just meet new people and jam out an idea. And as you say, like because you're on a strict time frame, you definitely have to give it your all. Otherwise, you just float around the idea so long that it doesn't seem as great anymore, I guess. So yeah, it's actually the one. Yeah, it's a really nice piece of advice. Just give it your all, and then if you, I guess that's my piece of advice. If you guys feel like you can make another game idea, that's actually one. Yeah, you can just go to the next idea and then see where we go. Yeah, see where you go from there.
Well, you both can't give pieces of advice without me giving a piece of advice. So I'll give one as well. Something that a friend of mine recently said that stuck with me. Nick Barker, who's an indie dev based in, I think he's in Dunedin. Oh, I'm going to get that wrong. Maybe Wellington, down south of Auckland somewhere. His piece of advice for indie devs was to remove one. So if you have an idea for a game, to as you're building it, or when you're kind of nearing the end and you don't know where the like scope is ending, remove every feature of the game one by one until it's clearly not a playable game anymore, and then add the last feature back in. And the whole point was that it's surprising how much of like a simple mechanic can become complex to players, and to just try keep it as simple as possible. I thought that was a good piece of advice.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, I think it's I think it's great advice. I think we're seeing so many AAA studios fail, trying to just jam everything into a game, and I think it's a really hard thing to do. Like, I think the massive advantage indie games have is they don't have any resources. They don't have they have one or two programmers, or they have a small team of programmers, and they can't do everything, and they need to make things fun now. And I think Minecraft is probably the perfect example, where it like literally released when it was, in my opinion, probably pretty much nothing. Like, you could place blocks and that was it, and they just slowly snowballed their way into features that were good. And it was sort of, it was always fun, where a lot of these AAA games sort of get to the alpha and beta phases, and the entire community, for better or for worse, just absolutely is like, everything sucks about this game. The new Battlefield comes to mind, where I think they're still struggling to turn it around, and I think it's just a very hard thing to try do everything at once. It's easy to start off small, and if you're indie, I think you should really lean into that. Like, try get it fun as fast as possible.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the AAA scene is kind of been like that, where just they do try to cram as much as possible, and then the problem then becomes that if you release too quickly, the community will just get angry at you. But if you release too late, then it comes to pretty much like a battle of attrition, where it's good that you maintain quality, but if you keep it too long, then if you postpone the game too long, then people's trust just start to wane a bit. Like, case in point, I've been playing the new Pokemon game recently, and for me at least, it's graphically it's not as, I can admit, it's not as great as most people want it to be, but the core gameplay loop actually is the thing that Game Freak and Nintendo has actually perfected. and I think that's actually the thing that they were aiming for in the first place. It was never meant to be Pokemon Breath of the Wild, if that's what most people were thinking of it. But instead, it's just Pokemon open world. That's about it.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, Nintendo's always managed to do things that I think are absolutely impossible with really, really low end hardware. Like I don't think any
Mm.
of the consoles. I think maybe the Nintendo 64 was, which I didn't play when that was out. But every Nintendo console that's been out that I've played has really low end hardware compared to their competitors. In terms of raw CPU and GPU sort of compute, not things like their motion controls and rumble
Yeah.
and touchscreens and GZDR asks about how game devs are paid, whether it's by the hour or salary. I think at least most people I know are paid by salary and quite often
Mm.
have clauses in their contracts that will define overtime.
Mm.
That's how it's set up for me and how it's been set up for
Yeah.
me at all the companies I've worked at previously.
Yeah, I've always been on a salary with like a expected hours a week to work, and then some studios have had yeah, like overtime clauses. Some have like a no overtime policy. Some have, if you work overtime until you bank like 20 hours, and then you can redeem that in cash during your next pay cycle. When I was at Weta Game Shop, there I was a contractor there, so that was
Mm.
more just being paid on an hourly basis. Um, but I think yeah, most studios have like a salary structure, and from my experience, like that's great security. Obviously, crunch culture is terrible, but I think
Mm.
we're starting to talk more about it and find ways of not letting crunch become the norm. But
Mm.
what I've seen from like when I used to be in film, games are so much more stable. Just having like that stable income and having people that are on salary rather than contractors that go from contract to contract. I'm really grateful for games and how stable they are and how many like salaried positions are available once you get past like the indie phase and there's like a proper
Mm.
studio environment.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually true.
I
Yeah.
think one of the tricky things with game dev, hopefully I don't get flamed for saying this. I think whenever whenever you do get to the end of projects, I think there just sort of naturally has to be a little bit of crunch, and I think there's a lot of studios that don't handle it very very well, and I think
Mm.
it's hard to handle it well. But I think getting stuff over the line in any project, whether it's engineering, programming, well outside of just sort of programming in movies and whatnot, I think finishing the last 1% of a project is always tricky. I think it's really
Mm.
important for studios to be very honest and transparent and have ways of being compensating their staff throughout it. But I think at any of the companies I've worked out, there always has been a little bit of push for certain milestones and whatnot. I don't think any of it I would describe as the horrors that I've heard of some crunch stories. But I think going into the industry, you should I think it's like university assignments. There's sort of a healthy amount of crunching for a university assignment, and there's the unhealthy amount. And I think most students that have been for university or polytechs
Mm.
can relate with that. I'm hoping. And I think working in the industry is similar to that.
Yeah, if you put it in that kind of mindset, it's like a project is basically a university assignment, then it kind of makes sense because then you do your due diligence, just researching tackling the problem like the first 10% of the way through, and then the final 1% is pretty much a game of trying not to crunch or maybe crunching a little bit, especially if you want to reach that A or high rank or really good grade for the final assignment. So I guess yeah, that's That's one way to put it. Yeah. Um. Hmm. I'm trying to think. I have actually worked on like a few companies that actually do have that. The company I'm working for right now actually has a good policy when it comes to crunch culture, and I really like it. And they're really against it. But yeah, I have actually worked in a few companies where they pretty much like do exhaust their resources too much and expect a lot of things under staff that sometimes it does get overwhelming if you're not in the right mindset. So I guess yeah, just trying to find the right balance to it. And it's like the one key thing is the key thing to take note there. Just trying to find a way to say no, that's enough. Trying to say no, that's enough, and just tackle the problem again tomorrow, rather than continuing tackling the project head on. Well, continuing the project to the point of burnout, which is the one thing that yeah most industries don't really want to tackle and try to prevent anyways.
From my experience, and not my current employer, but usually the stem of crunch happens when not all the like stakeholders are based in one location. Say like a studio that's based in another country, and you get like an email that says that you have this deadline to hit, and all you have is like the email, and there's no discussion. It's just you have a deadline to hit, and that's like those are your stakeholders and the people that you report to, and there isn't really a means to say no or to communicate. And I feel like that's probably what leads to a lot of it, where the actual production team aren't the same people that are making the decisions as to where the
Mhm.
deadlines are, and that's where the miscommunication happens. But when all your team is in the same place, I feel like you can have those realistic discussions and find solutions, whether it's like cutting features or putting like a phase one of a feature and then planning on doing like phase 2 and 3 later.
Mhm.
There's lots of ways around it, but sadly, with I think some of the companies that suffer with crunch, it's when the lines of communication are too separate and there's no way of getting everyone in one room to like talk about the problem. It's like it goes through too many chains of command that it's completely impossible to there's so many things that so many variables that you can't just put on one whiteboard and solve. Um,
Yeah, and there's
yeah.
so many different ways like that these things can happen. Like I've read a retrospective on, not to come back to it, but Among Us, and it was like they had 1 billion monthly active users, I think, at their peak, which
Mm.
is just the most insane like number I've ever heard. Like it's like they had 1 billion registered accounts over, I think it was like 6 months or something, and it's like how do you like get the servers like under control and whatnot when that happens? Because like that's probably the most unusual story I've ever seen. Because for those that don't know, the game was practically a zombie game at the point where it was blowing up. They'd winded down all their resources. They were just supporting it a little bit, but other than that, they'd all moved on to different things. And then it just went absolutely viral.
Crazy. Yeah, it's kind of
So,
like Project Zomboid as well. Recently, just started blowing up out of nowhere.
so here's a good question for you, Carl. What did you learn through the experience of releasing Icarus?
There's definitely a lot of lessons from like personally working remotely and that kind of thing. From like the project as a whole, if there's any kind of advice I could share there, I'd say how important marketing is. Like, I think that was really interesting to see the lead up to launch. We did beta weekends for 2 weeks. I think we did 6 beta weekends in total. Every 2 weeks, we had like a new area or a new feature that we kind of featured for that beta weekend, and we got to do a lot of testing. We got to do a lot of like teasing and marketing, and we got to sponsor streamers to get in at an early stage and kind of build that hype. And I think that was really important, just because one thing I hear a lot of, especially when talking to indie devs, is marketing is an area that most of the time they have very little experience or interest in like doing. But that I think is 80%. Even if the game is great, like marketing makes up 80% of if it's going to be successful or not. And that's just the harsh reality of a market where there's so many games being released, and there's a really horrible stat about how many games actually sell more than 100 units, and it's not it's there's a small percentage that actually make like profitable games in total out of all the games that are published to Steam. itch.io is even worse, and I think marketing, is really important. I don't have any really good marketing advice, but I think you should make sure that you have a marketing strategy and see if you can find someone that is either interested in it or research online, like some good strategies, whether it's having a launch trailer, reaching out to like news organizations, finding streamers that work in like that play games in the same genre that you're making, try to connect with them, creating like a private Discord community and trying to get people that fall into your like circle to get them involved in like at a community level. That's always really valuable. Having like a really catchy title or like good GIFs and screenshots of your game really helps sell it when people are scrolling through social media. There's a million different ways to market your game, but I think one lesson is I realized just how important that was for Icarus.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off that, not that I have much experience with it, but one of the things that YouTubers talk about a lot that I think is not appreciated as much sort of in game development is, in some ways you should be spending almost 50% of your time sort of like on the YouTube thumbnail and the text under it, and like you should be really trying to make, because like on YouTube it's all about click through rate, and I think click through rate being sort of what percentage of users click on a thumbnail they see.
Yeah.
Like with your Steam game, you should be making it really like your image on Steam, like to click on, should be as appealing as possible. And once you click on it, your description should like really entice the user, and you should have as many GIFs and whatnot as Carl was saying.
Yeah, definitely. Considering that I've never really went into deep when it comes to Steam, but I definitely do agree on the YouTube side of things, because I do remember them saying that when it comes to YouTube, in order for a video to go really viral, is that it's mainly to do with the thumbnail and the title text. So that's one way. That's one of the best ways to do it, and that's actually how some of the most notorious indie games went viral. Off the top of my head, it's Five Nights at Freddy's, one of them. Among Us, I think, went viral from Twitch or YouTube. I can't really remember which.
Probably
But-
both.
Yeah, probably both. Yeah, it's definitely just like based on like how the community responds to the interactions in the world. I guess like the one of the ways to garner attention, and just like the amount of people piggyback writing on the amount on generating the content that they want to social media and all that other stuff to gain the organic traffic needed to make the sales, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So if talking about crunch wasn't controversial enough, Nahabor asks about our take on the NFTs in the metaverse, the current two buzziest words.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately, so I could talk about this for a while, and I think I've prepared
Yeah.
my answer enough to not offend anyone, but
Okay.
also to be well. So okay, if I can just put my opinion out there, I think the space is a wild west right now. There's definitely a lot of sketchy projects, and I get a lot of DMs on Discord after joining certain communities about different projects that I have zero trust in. It's definitely a place that you need to be careful with your money. People are being, scammed left, right, and center. There's definitely like environmental concerns, which I can't really speak on because I don't really know the technology enough. But I do constantly see back and forth about there being improvements to the environmental risk to it's never going to like get to a state that's going to be good enough. And I don't really know the state of that right now. But I have seen some really cool projects that have come about that I'm keeping an eye on. But the whole like play to earn like corner of the industry that's developing, I haven't really like figured out exactly where that sits. I feel like there's so many things being tried right now that only time will tell what sticks. There's so many different like metaverse companies, people trying to sell land, sell tokens, sell like game experiences, having like casino experiences on the blockchain, and it's honestly it's such a hard topic to talk about because everyone's got a different perspective and they're exposed to different things. But I guess my comment would be to definitely be careful. Don't just throw your savings into it. And second, it's probably going to take a couple years at least before the technology gets to a state that people actually see the value in. The last year was like profile pictures on Twitter, and who knows what the next year is going to be for like where the community goes and where the technology evolves to. But yeah, I don't know.
Man,
what do you guys think?
so many places to start. I don't know where I want to start with this. I guess I first want to start with saying that I think a lot of people make decisions really quickly on things like this nowadays, where they didn't used to in the past as much. I think, like, if the internet was invented right now, I feel like people would be like super critical of sort of like a lot of its environmental costs and whatnot. In the same way that's happening. I think a lot of my opinion on sort of NFTs, I don't really know. Like I know a lot about the technology. I used to work at a blockchain company back in 2016/17, which is quite a while ago now in the sort of crypto sphere. Yeah, like I think it's quite similar to sort of loot boxes and whatnot. I think there's a lot of horrible things that go on from them. I think there's a lot of addiction that happens from things like crate gambling, and especially someone messaging that knows me directly that I bought a crypto kitty back in the day and it's lost forever on the blockchain, but for $5. So that's where I want to start with sort of the technology thing. But the second thing is it amazes me how quickly these terms change from term to term. Like I've been doing VR for probably about 3 or 4 years, and VR was sort of the buzzword, and then the next buzzword that was sort of under everything I did was digital twins, which is like sort of having real like having something that's in the real world and having something in the virtual world and synchronizing some of the data between it, whether it's like sort of like the fan speeds of things cooling down and cooling stuff down in like a power station. And now I feel like everything that I've done that's a digital twin now will be called metaverse. Like I see like car manufacturing companies talking about like, oh, we prototype building the factory, we do it in the metaverse, and it's not even online or anything. Like it's literally like got no internet connectivity at all. But it's the metaverse now. Like VR is like this dead term now, and I feel like some companies we have to thank for that. Where Sony's calling all of their new TVs their XR TVs, even though that they have no 3D or anything. It's just their picture quality is so much different with their AI processing that it deems the term XR, which is so now that we've got companies doing that, I guess we have to get a new buzzword, and now we're going to have metaverse everything. I think with any of these new industries, there's going to be a lot of companies that fail. And I think what's really unique about NFTs is we've never had such a way to scam so many people, which is why it's become so controversial.
Totally.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh. What's your thoughts?
I've got a big piggybacking on like what Carl's opinion is, because yeah, as most people think is like it is the new buzzword, is new. I don't know if people understand it too much, and as mentioned, it is basically the Wild West at the moment. It's kind of, think of it like the internet how it was back in the mid 2000s. No one really knows how to use it, and no one really has. There are no laws in place at the moment to streamline the process. So, for me at least, it's best to just know where you get, know where your NFT is going into, or know what the NFT is. Just have a bit of knowledge before investing in it and going into crypto, because yeah, as mentioned, there's like a lot of things that there's a lot of places that will make you go bankrupt if you don't play your cards right. And yeah, metaverse. It's funny. Before Facebook became Meta, whenever I thought of the metaverse, I literally thought of the world in Persona 5, which is just an entirely different landscape altogether, and it's made out of the collective unconscious. So for me, the metaverse is just another buzzword to describe what mixed reality could be. And funny you mentioned about that, Logan. When it comes to XR TVs, I think wasn't Sony the ones that made that stupid 3D TVs back in 2010?
Yeah, and their new TVs that have XR. Sony has plastered XR over everything. Their cameras
Yeah.
are XR cameras, despite being 2D cameras, which it kills me a little bit inside. But oh,
Yeah.
like they're not even doing panoramas. If they're doing panoramas, I might give them a pass. But yeah. Deco asks if there's a Auckland game dev Discord. There is a Slack.
There is a Slack, yes. The NZ Game Dev Slack server, is it?
Yeah.
Yep. NZ Game Dev. There's also a New Zealand game developers Discord. Yeah, there's some conversations that happen there too.
What do you mean by that, Michael V? That the HoloLens doesn't display holograms? I feel like it pretty much does. The thing I love the most about the HoloLens 1, I don't know if either of you have tried it, is everyone that I know that's tried it, you know, they got this big grin when they're about to put it on, and you can see the anticipation. And every single person I've seen put on a HoloLens. I've only tried the HoloLens 1, so I haven't tried the HoloLens 2, but I've heard the HoloLens 2 has all kinds of lens issues. But every person I know that's put the HoloLens 1 on, they got the grin, they're all excited there, and then they put it on and they go, oh, because the screen is about. It looks really amazing. Like, it looks actually as crisp as some of the best VR headsets now. Like, you can easily read the text, but the screen size is just tiny. Where when you look at all the commercials of the HoloLens, it's like they have like this whole Minecraft place on like a desk, and they're placing blocks, and like you can see this massive Minecraft build where it's got like a castle, and it's got like a giant dragon or something, and it's
marketing. Yeah.
And it's not quite like that, but it's really cool. It's just one of those super early technologies that's it's probably 5 years away now. Back when I tried the HoloLens, it was 10 years away, but now I think it's probably 5 years away.
The Magic
It's
Leap 2
projections
as
on
well was
glass,
announced.
not 3D. It looks, in my opinion, it looks like holograms in the real world. Like it really does look like that.
Maybe what Michael wants is he wants to walk into a room with like a conference table and without having to put any gear on to just see, someone like presenting or like a globe, like you see in Iron Man and the Avengers, like um,
Like how Tony Stark does his hologram testing thingies. Oh,
yeah.
Michael, you can always get one of those cool little mirror displays that makes holograms. You put your phone in it and like has the 4 mirrors, and as long as you're standing from the right angle, it looks like one. But yeah, that's probably the closest we've got.
yeah.
One thing that could be another conversation to like go down is this topic that I've heard a little like more and more as the months go by is the meme economy and like the power of memes. And I think
Economy.
I think the whole NFT space is like, and kind of like what happened last year with GameStop, and I think there's a lot of power being put towards memes these days, and like because everyone's going more digital,
Yeah.
the power of memes and like games as well, like Squid Game, for example, when that came out, the memes that came from people recreating it in Roblox and like playing those levels. I think there's an interesting interesting trend that's happening with society right now where memes are becoming more and more powerful, and like different communities are being like grown through memes as they like go around, and that happened with like Dogecoin and different like NFT projects. It's just an interesting thing. I don't know how that relates to gaming per se, but I think as games become easier to develop, they're starting to become more memeable, and like games and memes are starting to mix a bit. Um, but I don't know. I don't really know where that conversation could go, but it's just something I think is interesting to think about.
It's
Who
something
who who,
interesting to think
who
about.
would have ever thought that memes would become so mainstream? I never thought they would quite get to where they are, um where they are now.
I guess, yeah, because if you think about it, what was like the mainstream memes on our generation? It was like Vine, if not, maybe yeah, maybe like Vine. But now we have like TikTok, where it's basically doing the same thing, but it's much more accessible because it actually reaches much more bigger markets like China and all that jazz. So I guess like in a cult in yeah a cultural perspective, it's like memes are becoming more accessible for everyone to look into, uh, to look into and view. I remember I saw my sister just scrolling through TikTok looking through Genshin Impact memes, and I was like, I'm just gonna go and watch my memes on YouTube because it's much more yeah, it's much more content to chew through rather than yeah.
Do you need the highest quality of memes?
I guess yeah. That's one way to put it.
Need the high production quality memes.
Yeah. Hmm.
But yeah, I think it is interesting sort of seeing with social media platform by platform. TikTok really has changed everything, and YouTube, in my opinion, has quickly pivoted their strategy to YouTube Shorts.
Hmm. Yeah,
Not that I
YouTube
think
Shorts.
copying's a bad thing, but it's definitely like I think all the platforms do it, and
Hmm.
you see on the note of copying, you see Twitter's now adding dislikes, but only dislikes that aren't public,
Okay.
as a beta feature. So I thought that was
Okay.
kind of funny to see after YouTube removed the dislike count.
And Twitter's doing the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. And actually, one interesting thing I actually could ask when it comes to social media is that will we ever see social media gaming come back, like how Facebook gaming was back in the day?
I
Because
think
we
so.
have, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking into this because I was really interested about this, about why HTML games can't be played
Mm,
through social media apps, like why there isn't like a way to upload like a game to a tweet. And
mm,
I think it comes down to the technology, like the social media like companies not supporting it. But there's
mm.
definitely a lot of companies that I think Facebook games. What are they called? Just I think Facebook gaming.
I think it's called
Yeah,
Facebook Gaming.
it's
They
just called Facebook gaming.
they're starting to like really try push for that like next generation of like Farmville type games that are native to Facebook that people can kind of play as they're scrolling. There's a company that's doing some interesting things called QuickSave Interactive. I think they're based in Sweden, and their whole business model is to make games that are like easily that can be played in like a browser that have quick game loops, and it's just built for like a different audience than what like a Steam game would be. I definitely think that that's coming, and that's going to be a corner of the industry as well as like web browser based games. Um,
Mm.
but that does need the like social networks to adopt it as well, um, because that's where people spend their attention. But we'll see. See if Instagram ad games ever one day.
It's amazed me that in some ways, and I think I'll probably annoy a lot of web developers by saying this, sort of how in some ways like websites went backwards in terms of technology when Flash died. Like I feel like now we're finally starting to see like a lot of really fancy CSS animations and
Mm.
whatnot. But I feel like the things people used to do with Flash and Flash games were so amazing
Mm.
back in the day, and I feel like a lot of websites are quite simple now compared to what used to like what was done back in the day. But maybe I'm just super nostalgic with rose tinted glasses.
Yeah. So I looked into that, and Adobe Flash was like the go-to for like browser-based games. But there was
Yeah.
like in 2008 or something, Steve Jobs banned Adobe Flash to be supported on iPhones because of security reasons. Like
Uh,
they didn't like give access, I think, to the apps to like the degree that Apple wanted. So they banned it on iPhones, and that pretty much just killed the technology. Like people just started jumping off because of how much of a hold they had. I think on like on MacBooks and on iPhones, that technology just kind of died away, and yeah, it's a shame. I used to play a bunch of Flash games as well back in like the early 2000s that were really fun, and just as like a teenager were exactly the kind of games that I needed to play,
mm.
were just like quick, fun little arcade adventure games.
I
Yeah.
remember so well the excitement when sort of the iPhone 3 and 4 were coming out that like we were finally going to be able to play all of our Flash games on a mobile device, and they were going to have big budgets, and um how it didn't really turn
It,
out it didn't really turn out exactly how we want. And I think for a lot of those Flash games, and I think Carl will hopefully agree. I was so sad to see what happened to some of these Flash games where they just put so much free to play. Well, what's now known, I guess, is like sort of free to play mechanics where
mm.
they time box you. It's like psychological manipulation 101, the mobile guide to psychologically sort of making people play your game all day long every day.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. It was a completely different atmosphere. I think the what changed is the amount of like data that you could get from players, and like economy designers started to become once microtransactions became a thing, that just completely like revolutionized the
Mm.
mobile space. Yeah.
James mentions in chat Wordle, if anyone's got any opinions on Wordle.
It's a cute game.
That's fun. I play with my wife like every day. Actually, need to remember to play it before the end of the day. What I've seen that's interesting over the last few weeks is not clones, but people that are like adding to the game mechanics. So it's like Dawdle. So it's like 2 Wordles at the same time, and then
Oh,
there's Quirtle, which is 4 like Wordles at the same time, but you have like 10 guesses. So it's just people that like the game mechanic and maybe have done the word for the day. They can like go to these other websites and just play the game again, but in like a more challenging way. But the whole like New York Times acquisition was interesting, and I'm really happy for the developer that he was able to sell it.
If anyone wants a great one to play, there's Absurdle, which is like an adversary version of Wordle, where it actually changes the word depending on like what you get. Like it has like a high chance of changing the word depending on what letters you guess. So like you don't actually get like any hints because it keeps changing its word. So if you want to like, so if you want like a really hard like horrible version, I feel like I do that to most games I play. I find the hard and horrible versions, but yeah, if you want a hard, horrible, frustrating version of Wordle, try Absurdle. It does even. I haven't tried it, but it does have settings to make it even harder again, which I have not tried. The base game is hard enough. Yeah, you do end up with some crazy words at the end of it, James. Yeah.
What's the best starting word for Wordle?
I'm pretty weak on it. I haven't. I usually start with like something like Sting because it's got like S and T and one vowel. But I've seen that people have made YouTube videos where they've literally brute forced with the word list. It's like this mathematically is the best word using like information theory and whatnot.
A good one is Wordle. Not Wordle. What am I talking about? Audio. Audio, just because it has 4 vowels in it.
Oh wow.
But
oh wow, yeah.
I don't like using the same word every time because I feel like that ruins the experience a bit. I feel like a robot after I have like the first 3 words that I use every time. So heats is a good one. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. That was a cool story.
Yeah.
Should we transition to announcement? Oh, do you guys think VR games market is? I think for VR games, I think it's undeniably growing. I don't know about on the PC side, but the Oculus Quest at Christmas time became the #1 app on iOS, which I still don't understand how it got to #1. The sales for Oculus Quest, I think, are now fully going. Oh, the Meta Quest are now going sort of full exponential. Which will start to taper off pretty soon, I'm sure. But yeah, I think that market is massive. I'm super biased, by the way. I'm currently developing a game for that, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But if you look at the raw sales figures,
like it's totally. I think the facts are there, and I think what will show the growth in the industry isn't more people buying headsets. It'll be either like the next like Beat Saber or the next super hot that like becomes popular, and the game is gonna draw in a lot of attention. So I think it's completely reliant on the game developers innovating on the genre and finding that like market. And I've no doubt it's going to happen with the amount of people I see working in the space. So that's exciting. But the thing with Oculus and like the Meta Quest is that it's being used for more than just games. So there's a whole market being developed that's not just games. It's like workspaces, fitness. There's like different types of genres of games, and that's all like growing from zero. So it's going to be a long time until the whole industry is matured there. But yeah, I'm excited to see what the next game is that like pops off and becomes a new hit.
I think for a lot of people, they find it quite hard to understand why the Oculus Quest has succeeded, and I don't think it's obvious. Should we be developing? Yes. The answer is yes, James.
Yes.
I think the reason why a lot of people are surprised that the Quest is succeeding. One, it's cheap, but I think the main reason that it's so much more successful than any of the other Steam VR headsets is you can set up this headset and like once you know how to draw the boundary in about 10 seconds and you can be ready to demo. Like when I started my job and did my first prototype for viewing houses, my colleagues literally went to a restaurant and in the car park of the restaurant they literally walked around in an entire house in the car park and then went and had dinner. And it's like that's how easy it is to set up playing a game. And they're adding massive features every few weeks. Like it's I don't know how the Facebook team does it. Like they recently added, now if your cat or dog walks in VR, you'll see like a holographic version of them sort of like appear inside your game.
Wow. They have like 50,000 developers. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, but it's like
it's insane.
It's one of those things where adding more developers doesn't always help, and I'm sure you've probably seen that firsthand. I think there's my opinion on VR, which I'm super like as biased as you could be. I think there's a golden time right now where marketing, like you don't have to do as much marketing as releasing on Steam or mobile at the moment, because if you make the best whatever game, it will market itself quite well at the moment, and I think that will last for 1 to 2 years, and that will all be over. And
I don't see AAA studios moving over to VR yet, but I know there will be a time where that's kind of like what mobile happened. Is AAA studios being built and invested in VR, whereas it's kind of like a nice indie scene right now. I feel there isn't a lot of AAA titles emerging, so there's a great chance of awareness there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think in probably 2 or 3 years, AAA will come to the party. So I think it's still a little bit away, but I don't think it's very far away.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years is not too far away.
The first probably really big AAA game to be announced is they're working on the new one of the new Grand Theft Auto games is going to Quest.
Oh really?
So, that's huge.
That is huge.
But that is all that is known about it. That's literally all they said. Is we're making a Grand Theft Auto game for the Quest. Half-Life Alyx, that is the most amazing VR game, and if you have a VR headset, give Alyx a go. It's I think it's the best experience that there is right now.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael. Yeah, Valve is. I think they're like. I love Valve. Valve has made all my favorite games, but I think they've completely given up on VR pretty much, and that pains me a lot to say that. I think it's all about the Steam Deck now, and I think this is quite typical behavior of Valve as well. I think if you look at a lot of their other games, like for example TF2, which is still a massively popular game. There's half a developer to one developer working on it.
There's just half a developer working on it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Valve so much, but that's one of those things where when you love something so much, it hurts even more to see it crash and burn.
Yeah. Definitely.
Will Valve make a... Oh, I'll quickly answer one last question. Valve making a competitor to the Quest. Yes, it actually exists. There are tons of leaks and patents and lawsuits about it. It's been developed with AMD hardware.
Okay.
They're developing one of the first headsets that will have what's called varifocal lenses. At the moment, when you're in VR, you just sort of focus at the same distance no matter what. You don't actually change what length you're focusing. So they actually have lenses that physically move. Oh, sorry, they don't actually physically move. They actually use liquids where when you run a current through the liquid, it changes the optics of the lens. I think they're definitely working on it. I hope it comes out. I hope they actually manage to release it before it's too late. We'll see. I think Valve works on a lot of. If you've ever watched, there's a really good game on Steam. I forget what it's called. That goes over all of Valve's projects. It was like officially done with Valve. There's like probably 10 massive like AAA games that they've made in the last 20 years that have never seen the light of day. Like there's like 2 or 3 Half-Life 3s that have like got significantly through development. There's Left 4 Dead 3. There's like a AR version of Left 4 Dead. And there's so many screenshots and whatnot like that. You can see all these like crazy project that Valve's worked on that never get to see the light of day. Which, yes, Tyler McVick is a passionate gamer. Yeah, if you watch his YouTube channel, you'll get to see the depressing reality. I think I'd be really sad working at Valve in terms of if you got to work on these projects for 5 or 10 years and they literally went nowhere at all. So yeah, let's transition to announcements.
Yeah, we can transition to announcements. I sent you the link to the slides.
Cool.
Go.
Access denied.
That's what I said too. It's still private. Whoops. Bear with me.
But yeah, I think yeah. I think the quest has been the I'll just keep rambling while I get the link. I think the quest has been like for a lot of people, it's not what people expected to succeed because it's definitely not the most powerful or like the best graphics headset on the market. It's nowhere near as powerful as a gaming PC, but it just works as why it succeeded so well.
So, a couple of announcements to make. Regenerate Game Jam happening this weekend. It is a game jam trying to focus on with the mission to help make sustainable practices using game development techniques. So it's super fun. Perfect first timers because there's going to be a lot of mentors along as well. So if anyone has any questions on how to make a game or have any questions that they need help on, or there's a lot of people that are going to be there. But yeah, cool. So the one last bit would be the Miramar Creative Center grant. This was posted in the NZGDA socials this week. It's a $2,200 grant for creative projects, and it's a micro grant aimed at supporting emerging NZ-based creative projects and works, including interactive media such as games, AR, VR, films, comics, and yeah, all welcome to apply. You can apply via the artisan link down below. And yeah, and those are our announcements. I was actually going to want to cap off one final question. What are we excited for in 2022?
Just before I answer that, if anyone else has any other announcements, we can read them out. Just put a message in chat while we discuss what we're excited for in 2022. Oh, there's also call for. I don't have a slide on this, but call for speakers for the New Zealand Game Developers Conference has started today.
Right,
It's based in Wellington this year. Yeah, I don't have a link to it. But yeah, if you have any talks that you'd like to give there, you'll score a free ticket if your talk gets accepted.
Yeah, totally. Go to the NZGDA Twitter, just at NZGDA, to see all the links there. There's also the committee if you want to be a part of helping put together the streams for this year's NZGDA. Those are open as well. And if you're not signed up to the NZGDA newsletter, I'm putting that together, and that should be going out by the end of this week. And you can sign up to that at nzgda.com/join. And we share some news and announcements there as well.
No, you don't have to be Wellington based.
Nope.
No.
I'm gonna.
You don't have to go on this. Yeah.
It might be in person this year.
Yeah.
I think it will be a live event, but I have no idea.
Last year, 2 weeks after the event, we went into lockdown, so we just scraped by. But
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows
It's
what the future holds?
it seems like most restrictions, like most things are continuing on as normal as can nowadays, but you never know.
James, I
You
don't
never
think you
know.
need to be Wellington based for the Miramar fund. I think it's just New Zealand based, but that might be something to double check. I'm sure they answer that question in the first few lines.
Hmm.
Yeah, what am I looking forward to in 2022? I'm not going to say like in-person events because I've just kind of given up on that. And I think I'm excited. I'd say just based on the conversations we've had today, I'm excited for VR. Like I think there's going to be some big announcements. Meta is obviously putting a lot of money into it, and I think there's going to be some exciting projects that are going to probably push me over the edge of getting getting a Meta Quest headset, and I think the Meta Quest 2 comes out in a couple months or like mid this year, so that should be cool. That's what I'm looking forward to. It's just the next like iteration of VR games and technology.
Yeah, I'm hopefully looking forward to finally actually releasing a product. I hope I manage to release the game that I'm currently working on. There's nothing more exciting than that, right? The
Good luck
the
with
joy
that.
the joy of actually trying to get the last bit of a game done. I've worked on lots and lots of game jams, and I encourage anyone that wants to work on a game jam to join that event. I think it's where you will meet, like, you'll meet the best people at game jams. In my experience, like you'll find people that are really passionate, really hardworking, and you'll be able to learn so much more than you ever learn at university, in my opinion. Sorry, all the universities in New Zealand.
Yeah. What I'm really excited for in 2022 is, the rise of VR technology, and seeing how social media evolves when it comes to gaming. Because I want to see. I'm kind of keen to see if something like Newgrounds makes a comeback, where flat, kind of like Flash-based games, but using the latest technology in web dev. Even though, admittedly, some of them have gone back a step, but with the latest improvements in like libraries like React, I'm pretty sure we can make something. We can make games and then publish it in like social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, hopefully Instagram as well. But yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Well, it was good chatting with you both. Nice to meet you, Logan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to see each other in person hopefully sometime soon.
Yeah.
Nice.
Definitely. And that's a wrap. Thanks everyone for tuning into the Auckland Game Dev meetup, and catch you guys in the next one.
Yeah, thanks for all the questions and comments. It was awesome interacting with you
Yeah.
guys there.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye.